Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we getting on? Welcome to a brand new Fallout 76 video. So, Bethesda have dropped a first look at the update that will be arriving in September, which we know is going to be a big building update, but it's also going to have a humongous number of changes to combat. In some ways, I'd say yet again, although, this is somewhat unique in some ways as well. Primarily, this is going to be a weapons buff that is coming with this particular update. So, yeah, this list of patch notes is humongous, as I say, so we're going to split it into two. I'm going to go through most of the weapons stuff today. There are a few perk changes, so we'll go through those in another video, hopefully tomorrow, but we'll see what the hand of fate deals us. And then there's a whole load of other bits and pieces as well that we'll also touch on in that next video. So yeah, this is still going to be a long one though, so you might want to grab a cup of tea and a biscuit and put your feet up, and possibly even a pen and paper as well. I will try and skip through most of the number stuff, because that's not really what I do, and only some of it's going to relate to each individual player. So yeah, I'll try and give you the opportunity to pause when that comes along. You may want to have a look at what's available there that might specifically relate to your use case. A couple of general overviews. Apart from the massive range of buffs, there are going to be a couple of nerfs. For example, auto axes and chainsaws. They're getting a big nerf. VATS critical rates, specifically those generated by luck, are getting nerfed. So if you've got a really high luck build that's designed towards really, really fast criticals, your critical rate will be slower with this update. On the flip side, if you are wanting to go back to a stealth commando or a sneaky build like that, they're switching sneak attack damage from additive to multiplicative. That's always a hard word to say. Basically, that constitutes a massive buff to sneak attack damage, or will do when the update comes along. So yeah, that's quite cool. That's just a couple of things out of a very, very long list. So yeah, we'll get cracking with this, I guess, because this is going to take a minute. Strap in. Upcoming combat and perk changes. Oh yeah, I did mean to say, it's worth noting that this is exceedingly subject to change, as the PTS has not yet opened and we don't have a date for its opening. I'm going to go off, unofficially guessing probably next Friday, but no official date yet. So this is just a look at it before it hits the PTS, and obviously it can change during that, and some of this is changes to other changes from previous updates, so how permanent this will be is still anybody's guess, but this is what they're looking at right now. So, let's scroll. In the Gone Fishing patch notes earlier this month, we provided an update to how we felt combat rebalancing project we started last year has gone so far. We also mentioned in the article we wanted a few more substantial updates to solidify the new foundation of combat for the future content we have planned. Today we wanted to give you an early look at the combat rebalancing work that will arrive in our public test server, PTS. We'll have more information for you about this when the PTS begins at a later date. This round of combat balancing adjustments has a strong focus on improving the experience of using weapons both in and out of VATS, as well as providing significant boosts to underperforming weapons. Some changes to highlight include significant increases to melee weapon damage, boost to damage over time effects, bashing with weapons now scaling with players' level, changes to the VATS formula, and improved manual aiming feel. And to be fair, at a first read-through of this, I think most of this is going to go the way they intend it to go, so that's promising, at least first impressions anyway. Obviously, haven't got my hands on it yet, and like everybody else, it's not on the PTS yet. Adjustments have also been made across the board to make it easier for you to select weapons and mods that fit your desired playstyle, giving you more confidence that the weapons you want to play with will work across the wasteland. So yeah, there's the way you want your weapons to feel is going to be more of a factor in your decision-making process here than it used to be. I still think numbers game is going to be the way most people go, and with good reason, but it's going to be a bit more based on the way you like things to feel than it used to be. Due to these changes, we're also making some targeted health and resistance adjustments to some of Appalachia's more prolific enemies, for example super mutants and enemies in power armor, and scorched beasts. These creatures will have additional contrast in their resistances to highlight their strength and weaknesses versus different damage types. So they'll be getting more health and an adjustment to the things that they're resistant to, or not resistant to, conversely. And since this is one of the largest numeric shifts Fallout 76's combat has gone through, we'll be on the lookout for potential follow-up adjustments both within the PTS and future patches. Yeah. This is subject to change because the more numbers they play with, the more likely problems are to occur. Greater complexity equals more potential for issues. As it always does. So, manual aim improvements. We've made changes to all range weapons to improve players' ability to hit targets outside of VATS. Hallelujah. I am very happy about this. This is the way I like to play. These changes vary per weapon, but they include smaller cone of fire. So that's the accuracy stat that your weapon has. Basically, there's a imaginary cone coming out the end of your gun, and the bullet or laser beam can end up anywhere within that cone, which does mean you can have the dot on an enemy's head and still have the bullet go past his ear, even though you were aiming just fine. So not my favourite feature, in fact probably one of the ones that annoys me more often. However, shrinking it down means fewer bullets that go past his ear, so yay! In general, I approve this change. Reduced recoil. Now funnily enough, you'd think I'd be okay with this. I realise Fallout is not aiming to be a mill sim here, but reduced recoil, it makes it easier, but not in a way that I would really want them to. Not that I really want to make it easier at all anyway, because it's too easy anyway. But yeah, recoil is easy to control, and when they reduce things like this, it just lowers the skill level required even further. It just makes the whole thing ridiculously easy, and it already is, so yeah. Obviously, this is a massive, massive power creep issue continuing here, and there's some efforts later on to offset that, but, oh my god. Yeah, this is not a game that is even pretending to have a challenge to it anymore, I don't think. Outside of one specific area, which they shouldn't have included in the game anyway, because, yeah, fuck that. But anyway, moving on. Additional shots can be fired before reaching peak recoil, so presumably the point at which the recoil caps out. So that's effectively an increase in fire rate for most things, I think. I'm guessing this affects primarily weapons like shotguns and single-shot weapons. I would think that's where this will be most obvious. Cone of fire now increases less as a result of moving, so weapons in general will be more accurate on the move. Reduce cone of fire while crouching and sneaking, so crouching and sneaking makes you more accurate, which is always good, as does aiming down sights. Spin-up weapons, such as the minigun and Gatling laser, will now have reduced recoil after firing for a short period of time, so if you're only on a short burst with it, you won't have to deal with recoil quite as much as you would with a longer burst. Medium and long scopes will have additional zoom levels, particularly in first person. That's cool. Press the VATS button to toggle between 2 and 3 zoom levels depending on the scope. Note, when aiming down a scope, you'll begin at the lowest zoom level, and then you click to 2 and 3 to zoom in further. Presumably if you come out, it'll default back to 0, and then you redo it. We've listed some general expectations for how weapons will behave below. Please note that mods can have a significant impact on weapon behaviour, so these relate to unmodded versions of each weapon type. So yeah, you can. This is a starting point, and you can adjust from there, but it'll be right in a general sense. There's one in here that's missing that really does tick me off ever so slightly, and that's automatic rifles, but we'll have to kind of guess a bit from that, I think. Pistols should be reasonably accurate in all situations, retain their accuracy pretty well while you move, and have minimal recoil, but they don't have massive damage, so that offsets that quite a lot. Revolvers are a bridge between regular pistols and single-shot rifles, in that they are more accurate at longer ranges, but you need to remain still and aim down sights to get that accuracy, and they are much more high recoil. Same thing with single-shot rifles as well. For shotguns, we've got spread improves while crouching or aiming down sights, so it tightens up that shot a little bit, but they're not especially accurate in general, and they have higher recoil than most other weapons. I'm not quite sure what the accurate thing is really referencing, because you'd think that would basically be the spread, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you? I don't know. But yeah, that's basically shotguns behaving the way you'd expect shotguns to behave, I guess. In a video game sense, of course. It's not getting to the whole real-world thing. Not with those, anyway. Submachine guns don't have the same peak accuracy in various situations as pistols or rifles, but they're easy to use while moving, so their accuracy doesn't drop as much while you're on the move, but they won't be quite as precise in general. Okay. Semi-auto rifles have solid accuracy at long range, strong benefits from crouching and aiming down sights, but not especially accurate relative to some weapons when you're moving. Nightmare to use on the move. Okay. Yeah, that does make some sense. I mean, as we'll see in a minute, if you stick a long barrel on it, that's going to be even more exacerbated. It's designed for taking your time and landing your shots. Sit still, slow up, and then land a couple of quick hits in quick succession. That's the idea. So, presumably, automatic rifles are going to be less accurate than single-shot stuff at long range, but okay closer up. In general, the closer you get to a target with this set of changes, the more accurate you'll be anyway, which is both logical and a positive change, I think. And presumably, crouching, sneaking, aiming down sights will help with that as well, but they'll probably have more recoil and lower damage, I would think. Well, I'm speculating because they're not here. So, single-shot rifles have highest overall accuracy at long range and fare best while crouching and aiming down sights, but they're not very accurate on the move, and the cone of fire takes longer to recover than other weapons. So if you move, it takes longer for that accuracy to return. Okay. Ballistic heavy weapons. Reasonable overall accuracy and controllable recoil during sustained fire, but not as precise as other weapons. Spin-up weapons, a bit more precise, apparently. Good recoil and cone of fire benefit from crouching and aiming down sights. Yeah, because the sights on those are not massively useful for most things, especially in first person, actually. You'd think they would be, but they can be a bit awkward. 50 caliber machine gun is going to maintain more accuracy on the move than other heavy autos. That's a really good one, particularly if you're just getting into heavy weapons, because it's relatively easy to find, maintain, upgrade, and keep stocked with ammo, the 50 cal. So it's not a bad bet, that one. And it's quite fun too, which doesn't hurt. The light machine gun can act somewhat as a bridge between heavy weapons and automatic rifles. It can be more precise at longer ranges than most heavy weapons, but it isn't as accurate on the move. Okay. So, yeah, if you want to stay still and put sustained fire into a small target, a light machine gun will be better at it than most other heavy weapons, but not so much when you start moving. Still think that's going to be a bit iffy. Yeah, I think that's going to be a hard one to justify. It's going to be a lot easier going forward to supply ammo for it, because it's switching to a 45. Spoiler! So, laser and plasma weapons. Weapons with laser projectiles are typically more accurate and have less recoil than ballistic weapons. Plasma projectiles are somewhere in between. Same for alien weapons. But if they're more accurate and have less recoil, that logically would mean they do less damage, I would hope, because otherwise they'd be ridiculously OP, and I think that is the case. Explosive launchers have high recoil and don't have strong impact on accuracy due to the slow rate of fire. So yeah, they fire slowly anyway, so the recoil's offset. Not very accurate relative to other weapons and have very low accuracy when moving. So VATS. There are some changes to VATS here. The formula for calculating hit chances in VATS has been rewritten to be more consistent and intuitive. Overall, hit chances with most weapons will be higher. So, buffs. Distant, smaller and more difficult enemies will sometimes be harder to hit. The basic overview stands thusly. The formula begins with an assumption of maximum hit chance, 95%. Various factors can reduce your hit chance, such as the distance to the target, visibility of the target, difficulty of hitting each of the body parts, your weapon's general range, cone of fire, recoil, and fire rate. Perks, weapon mods, etc. can improve many of these factors or directly increase your hit chance as is, just straight up affect that percentage. Perception reduces some of the penalties of a large cone of fire and long distance to the target relative to your weapon's maximum range, so higher perception makes it easier to land your shots in VATS. So, getting into a bit more specifics, beyond about half of a weapon's range, hit chance steadily decreases down to 0%, presumably when you're out of range. Below half of a weapon's range, so closer to the target, penalties to hit chance are reduced, so you should be more accurate. As you close in on point-blank range, hit chance will increase until you have a very, very high chance of hitting the target. Basically, closer you get, the better it is, further out, the more problems you have. And this is going to be something that's going to come up with some of the range changes, which were noted further on down. But basically, one of the gripes you have with this emphasis on range to target is you might know what the number for your weapon's range is, but you've got no way of actually tracking it in the game. There's nothing in the game world that shows you what the range to the target is, and yeah, perspective is weird AF in Fallout anyway, so that just makes it even harder to deal with. You've got your best guess, and that's about it. And the feel. I suppose you could check out the damage numbers if you've got damage numbers switched on and kind of infer from that and kind of learn to recognise the distance that way, but not massively helpful, I don't feel. So we've got a couple of extra VATS changes here. Players can no longer target body parts on the opposite side of enemies, such as the ultragenic shield generator through the front of the EN06 Guardian in raids. So yay! That means basically an even bigger, completely entirely anticipated, but yet another FU to the solo player on the dev's part there. So yes, none of this should be affecting anybody, however, as none of you should be playing the raids anyway, because the devs should get the message that this is not acceptable. Distance to target calculation for large enemies now begins on the outer bounds of the creature rather than the center of the creature, improving the hit chance for many large creatures such as the Scorchbeast Queen. So yeah, you've got to hit the outer edge of it, its skin, rather than its core internal organs or something. Yeah, it should make hitting targets a bit easier in VATS, along with the rest of this as well. So we have changes to explosions here. They've adjusted many player weapon explosions so that they lose less damage towards the outer edge of the explosion. So more consistent damage so long as you're within the bounds of the projectile of the explosive's effect. We've made adjustments to the Fatman experimental MIRV and the frag grade MIRV explosions to have a wider spread for those projectiles, so they'll land over a wider area. They do less damage in general though. Fire arrows no longer explode and damage nearby targets, only the target that you actually hit. And increased damage dealt by explosive arrows in general. Always nice. They are reducing the explosive force of explosives in general, so that they no longer push corpses and objects as far, which is a mixed blessing. Easier to find the loot, harder to get them out of the way when you're trying to build something. We've also made adjustments so that the impact force of certain explosions was more appropriate to the size and scale of each explosion. So, yeah. But it doesn't affect the actual damage done. So all of these stuff should basically not push corpses and objects as far, and their explosive should reflect the power of the explosive in general. So a more powerful explosive, bigger area effect, smaller explosive, smaller area effect. And we'll pause here. Oh, you may wish to pause if you want to have a look at the details on this. Here's some differences with all of the different explosions that are being changed. So here are a whole bunch of explosion size adjustments that are happening, and they are specifically listed there if you want to take a specific look. Basically, the really interesting stuff like nuclear grenades, not listed. So, additional explosion adjustments. Explosion fear effects from Explosive Legendary mod and Ultrasight laser weapons, and the V63 laser carbine now match the weapon's projectile colour. So that's cool, that should just be a bit more natural and blend in. Reduce the frequency of grenades, mines, and explosive weapon ammo in containers and enemy loot. Actually, that's just going to reduce the rate, for me at least, that I make caps at, because I always end up with way more than I can use anyway. So, yeah, probably not a terribly unfortunate thing. I tend to sell most of them. And they've increased the crafting cost of nuclear and nuclear quantum grenades. How have they gone about doing that? Because right now I think it requires one Nuka-Cola and one frag grenade. So 2 frag grenades maybe? More likely 2 Nuka-Cola, I'm guessing. Which would suck and be quite annoying. But as I say, the limited use case of grenades in general, if you don't have them as often and you run out more often, you can either do the extra work, the legwork to get the materials, or you might do with not having them, because they're nice to have and they're fun, but they don't actually make vast amounts of difference in my view. I can live without, I think. So, base weapon damage. There are a lot of different buffs going on here. You may want to scroll and pause at your leisure, because, yeah, find the things that directly affect you. There's a lot of stuff in here. So much stuff. Let's see if there's anything that leaps out at me. Batman's getting a massive buff. Don't approve of that, I have to admit. Plasma Cutter's getting a buff, as if it wasn't already crazy powerful enough. That's a little silly, I think. Radium Rifle looks like it's getting a buff. Nice, definitely happy to see that. Railway Rifle's getting a big old buff. I'm sure some people will be happy about that one. Fixer's getting a big old buff. There are a lot of really big buffs in here. Ultrasight Gatling Laser's only getting a tiny one. Yeah, and the V63 laser carbine's getting a nerf from the look of that. Unless that may be the wrong way around. It might be a nerf or it might be a typo. There could be typos in here. There's a lot of individual bits of information. There's a lot of space for error in this. So, yeah, there we go. Lots of weapons, lots of changes. I didn't spot the handmade rifle. Let's have a quick gander at that, because I sometimes play with one of those and I'm toying with the idea of going back to one. Where is it? There we are. Handmade rifle, getting a big old buff. Nice. A 40% buff or so, from the look of that. So, additional weapon damage changes. Throwing weapons such as knives, grenades, sheepscot quills, and mines will scale with player level up to 50. Oh, that's cool. Weapons which have a hold to charge, like Gauss weapons, or weight to charge, like sniper lasers, now display their uncharged damage in the Pip-Boy and inspect menus rather than their fully charged damage. Both would be nice. Bethesda. Weapons which have been fired in a partially charged state and have explosive projectile, primarily Gauss weapons, will now have their explosion damage scaled to the amount of charge. That makes sense, actually. Gauss minigun now gains increased damage when being fired for prolonged periods, peaking at 60% bonus damage. Okay, so the damage scales the longer you keep firing it. There are some stuff in here designed to reduce the ammo cost of a Gauss minigun as well, which is interesting. And blading weapons include bleed over time effect, which makes sense. Okay, so there's a whole load of white adjustments here for thrown stuff. They're relatively small adjustments, so they're not particularly exciting. Feel free to pause if you would like to. Weapon bash damage has been increased for the following weapons, making weapon bashing more practical. Synergizes with the changes to stock and bayonet mods, which are listed further down as well. Bash now scales with weapon level, so the values below are for the weapon's maximum level. Lower levels scale proportionately. Just a quick look. Actually, it does a lot more damage. I am surprised. So, the damage is slightly more worth doing on the rare occasions you do it. You're still going to be way better off just shooting the enemy. The real way to make bashing particularly useful would be to give it a decent staggering effect. One that lasts long enough for your weapon to come from the bashed position back, be able to bring it up and start shooting again, so that the stagger is actually effective. Whereas what little kind of knockback effect there is to it already is so small that by the time you've got your gun back on target, the effect's worn off and you're getting no benefit anyway. You may even have been clobbered before you get the chance, depending on what weapon you're using. So the damage is slightly more worth having, but you're not going to be making a big thing out of it. I still wouldn't rush to spec into that, I don't think. Weapon ranges. We've adjusted the range for most player weapons to shore up some of the shortest range weapon types, such as shotguns, and to help differentiate many weapon classes that previously coalesced into about 204 to 288 feet of range when modded. Note: explosive launchers range is primarily derived from projectiles, so these numbers serve as a rough guide for their effective range. Also note, mods can have a strong impact on weapon ranges, so the numbers below are for the base weapon versions, or short barrels. So, as I said before, there's a whole lot of stuff you can have a look at here and pause if you want to. It's in feet, so that's also worth knowing. Of course, there's no way of really measuring this. You've just got to sort of... you can maybe sort of go off damage numbers if you've got those switched on, try and estimate it by eyeballing it, but... yeah, ultimately, the rule of thumb is the closer you are to the target, the more likely you are to do maximum damage and not miss. Yeah, perspective being what it is and the general way the game is set up, it's all well and good, but it's not particularly helpful information in my view. Additional range changes. Weapons now have reduced damage when exceeding their maximum range, down to 10% at double their maximum range. Okay. We've already talked about how your chance to hit decreases as well, so not only are your odds of hitting going to be next to nothing, presumably, with VATS that is, you will do less damage. So basically, if you're in VATS, I'm thinking this is going to mean that you won't hit beyond your maximum range, you'll be at 0%. If you want a free aim, you'll have a chance of hitting, but your damage is going to fall off dramatically, and the accuracy as well in general. So, yeah, that's interesting. Previously, we had modified most weapons to scale to 50% damage at the maximum range. This is unchanged. Change above only applies to weapons that have exceeded their maximum range. Yeah, so if you get beyond maximum range, presumably, or hit that maximum range, then half your damage falls off, and then it slowly decreases at 0.5% per percentage going out from there, roughly. So, weapon AP costs are being changed quite a lot. A lot of these are reductions in AP costs, which constitutes a buff. Some only small, some larger. There might be a couple of increases in here somewhere. Can I get that all in? No, I can't. Okay, so there's the top bit. There's the rest of it. So sneak attack multipliers. Most of these look to be going up as well. There's a long old list here. And as I mentioned before, sneak attacks are becoming multiplicative rather than additive. So not only are the multipliers going up, but they will significantly jump on top of that in terms of the amount of damage output they have. So yeah, sneak builds just got a whole lot more interesting. A lot more interesting. So, weapon critical attack multipliers. Most of these are going up as well from the look of it. Covers a lot of weapons. Yeah, I'm seeing mostly jumps from 2 to something higher than that. Yeah. Big old changes if you can do criticals. But of course, you'll be doing slightly fewer of them. Okay, we're nearly there for this one. We've got weapon mods to look at, and then we're going to take a look at the ammo changes, which is quite a small section anyway. So, and then we'll leave this one on that, and we'll move on to the rest of the other changes in a separate video so that we can actually get some time to catch our respective breath. And note that this is going on a while, so yeah, kudos if you're sticking with. Let's get on with this. Weapon mods. The vast majority of melee and ranged weapon mods have been updated to have more consistent and intuitive effects, and to offer additional choices for a variety of play styles. There are far too many changes to list, over 1,000 modifications updated. So here's some highlights for common mods. So basically, double check your weapon mods, well, come September anyway, and see what they're actually doing and review that. So yeah, yet another round of big old changes that we're going to have to work our way through when the patch lands. The effects listed per mod are relative to the base version of the weapon, not relative to prior version of the mod. Okay. So, stub barrels. Let's abbreviate this to something that makes a bit more sense. Cone of fire is being reduced. It is being condensed. Recoil is being reduced overall. AP cost will be reduced by 10%. 15% faster transition to ADS, and faster draw speed. Okay, that kind of makes sense. Doesn't necessarily offset some of the benefits other barrels have. Medium and long barrels. While longer range from medium and long barrels makes it easy to hit targets, both manually aiming and with VATS, and preserve more of your damage when firing at distant targets, they're a bit more difficult to use on the go. So, they will do reduced minimum recoil, increased maximum recoil. Means the recoil and cone of fire are increased. They take longer to draw, and they ADS a bit slower. So yeah, they'll be generally less accurate on the move, and they take a bit more time to actually get them into use when they have long barrels. Weapon sights and scopes. Glow sights will increase VATS accuracy and reduce AP cost. And front sight rings now make weapons more precise when aiming and reduce cone of fire, particularly shotguns there. No, combat shotguns, I'm thinking. Muzzle mods. Compensators will now reduce initial recoil and greatly increase the amount of shots that can be fired before reaching maximum recoil, so slow the rate at which recoil is delivered, I suppose. Muzzle brakes will reduce minimum and maximum recoil, so the range of recoil, and reduce the amount of lateral movement from recoil. So it'll still jerk up a little bit faster with a muzzle brake. But on the whole, that's probably going to be better if you're free aiming, because it'll be easy to control, I think. Especially as the reduced overall recoil, and you just have to pull down because there's less lateral movement. Definitely simplifies. Along with reducing the volume of each shot and slightly reducing recoil, suppressors now grant a 50% bonus to sneak attack damage. So suppressors are going to do extra damage when you're sneaking as well. Jesus, sneak attacks are getting massive buffs here. Whew. Bleed, fire, and poison mods. Changes have been made to fire and poison to offer better damage over time, and we've also made changes to some of these mods to convert their original damage to fire or poison, so they'll do less of their original damage and more fire and poison damage. On hit, that is, not just over time. Mods that add blades to weapons now more consistently have a bleed damage over time effect. Okay. And the damage from this has been greatly increased. Okay, that's cool as well. Receiver mods. Mods which change the ammo type of a weapon have been modified to better reflect the increase or decrease in ammo strength. Stronger ammo will generally have higher action point costs and lower durability, but be harder to control in manual aiming. Weaker ammo will have lower costs, easy to control and maintain, but obviously affects the damage done. Now, the choice of which ammo to use on a weapon is more about whether or not you want comfortable lower maintenance experience with a weaker ammo type, or instead push the weapon further with stronger ammo at the cost of increased difficulty to use and more expensive maintenance. Gotta be honest with you, especially if you're using a mouse, go for the higher damage. It's not hard to control recoil with a mouse. It just isn't. Similar to ammo type conversion mods, which use stronger ammo type, hardened receivers now have additional recoil and higher action point costs. Critical receivers now also increase the weapon's AP cost. Stocks and bayonets. Paired with damage increases on weapons themselves, switching from a grip to a stock or adding a bayonet will greatly improve bash damage. So, yeah, bashing actually almost doing a decent amount of damage now, which is nice to have. Prime receivers, this is a big change here, have been modified to be vastly more powerful. Yes, this is definitely what's listed here, but they are more expensive to use. Not only will players need to actively seek out more ultrasight ammo, but weapons with prime receivers will be harder to handle than before. So, instead of a 25% bonus to damage, they'll get a 100% bonus, so they'll do double damage, and they'll have a 20% longer range. They'll cost more action points if you're using VATS, and they'll have higher recoil at maximum cone of fire, so they'll be less accurate, and they will fire more slowly. However, it's worth noting that we'll get onto this in a second, but yeah, the ammo is also going to be harder to come by. So what they're aiming for here is it's a weapon to use more sparingly, not to run as your main weapon for most of your gameplay. You switch to it when you need it. That's what they're aiming for here. Semi-auto to automatic weapon mods, so switching to an automatic weapon mod. In addition to earlier base damage, sneak damage, and VATS critical attack damages from Gone Fishing update, automatic mods for semi-automatic weapons, which is most rifles, will also have the following changes. And some pistols too, actually, think about it. 30% higher capacity, but 17.5% reduced range, 7.5% increased weight, 7.5% reduced durability, 30% increased value, and higher maximum recoil and cone of fire. So more ammo capacity, reduced range and durability, and they'll be less accurate. But they will put more bullets down range faster. So you need to be a bit closer, basically, to get those bullets on target. A couple of other miscellaneous changes. Change the duplicate 38 receiver for pipe guns to be an automatic 45. Okay, makes sense. Fix an issue where laser and plasma weapon mods, which added fire damage, only had fire damage over time instead of also on hit. So that should now do damage straight away with it, and then damage over time as well. Cool. So effectively, meaning they will do damage faster, which is nice. Damage from sniper charging mods on laser weapons has been greatly increased, so laser snipers should be more viable. Cool. Whether or not they're actually viable, I don't know, but more viable. Bonus damage, armor penetration, increased limb damage, bleed damage, etc. from heavy, barbed, bladed, spiked, puncturing, and other mods on melee weapons, now applied much more consistently relative to the mod's name and appearance. That's actually, the last bit of that makes that less apparent as to what they're getting out there, but more consistently. Let's just leave it at that. That seems to be the case. Ammo changes. The light machine gun now uses 45 instead of 308. So, much more common ammo type. Gauss weapons and 2mm EC ammo. So, we made a few changes with the goal of easing the high ammo cost of using a Gauss minigun. Crafting yields for contextual ammo drops for 2mm EC ammo have been increased, so you should easily get more of it. Conversely, the other weapons that use this are going to be using more of it. The Gauss minigun will still consume at the same rate, however. So, this is offsetting the fact you'll get more ammo with the other weapons. The theory, therefore, being that you have more ammo for a Gauss minigun, but the other ones are using more ammo, so they end up in about the same place. Okay? So, Gauss pistol will now use 2 ammo per shot and have an 18-round clip. Rifle will use 3 ammo per shot and have a 15-round clip. Gauss shotgun now uses 5 ammo per shot, but has a 40-round clip. So yeah, offsetting the fact you'll be getting a lot more ammo, but doesn't affect the rate of consumption on the minigun. So, ultrasight ammo. This is a big change as we covered a second ago. As mentioned above, prime receivers now become much more powerful. Ultrasight ammo is geared towards being specialized ammo that players will use when they need a large boost in firepower over regular ammo. As such, ultrasight ammo is no longer included in contextual ammo drops. Instead, you'll receive randomized ammo. So yeah, you can no longer go to daily ops and the like to farm ultrasight ammo. You will have to get it by crafting. So yeah, ultrasight ammo is going to be a hell of a lot more difficult to get, and it was already more difficult in certain cases anyway. So yeah, those ones that require large quantities of flux are going to be rare use to borderline unusable weapons with this change, I think. I get where they're going with this. They want you to use them for those really tough bosses and basically nowhere else. They want them to be those specialized, this is my, oh dear, everything's hit the fan weapon. But yeah, this is going to be a bitter pill, I think, for a lot of Ultra Sight users. So a couple of changes to rad storms and glowing creatures, and some miscellaneous stuff as well. In order to increase the availability of materials used for crafting Ultra Sight ammo, we've made the following changes, which are not going to make much difference, I'm going to be honest here. Rad storms are more common, which is going to be useful for fishing as well, so there's that. Nuked flora, such as bomberries and fash ferns, can now have a chance to appear during rad storms, not just in nuke zones. But still not going to be that much. As to detecting where those rad storms are, there's two ways of doing it. You can either hop from region to region and see what comes up, or you can find a really high location, like, say, Spruce Knob, climb up to the top of that, or top of the world maybe, and take a look around the map. You should be able to see the rad storm in the distance, in theory. Glowing creatures have a greater chance to appear in rad storms, and they will often scale to slightly higher levels, so they'll be a bit more dangerous. Glowing creatures will scale more appropriately for lower level players, okay, which you'd expect anyway, and they'll have a chance to drop hardened mass and other similar nuke-only materials, so hardened mass, glowing mass, and high radiation fluids during rad storms, including glowing creatures that would have spawned anyway. So basically, you will have a chance to get more flux in rad storms, just not as much as in nuke zones. So it's an improvement in terms of your ability to farm flux, but honestly, especially if you're an endgame player, which is who this is aimed at, drop a nuke. And if you want to know where to find the specific flux that you need, a specific type, then go on to Nukepedia, the wiki for Fallout 76, look up flux. They actually have maps showing you where you can find individual types. So you can literally say, oh, there's a really high density if I nuke this spot on the map. So yeah, pro tip, check the wiki. It's very, very handy. So we have some miscellaneous combat changes to round things out with. Auto-axe and chainsaw attack speeds are being reduced from about 27 hits per second to about 14 hits per second. So that's 50%. Ooh, that's a big old nerf. They did need it. They were ridiculous and like absurdly overpowered. So they did need that, but that is a big... That's gonna sting a bit, I think. These weapons should no longer differ in attack speeds between first and third person views. Yeah, good. So they fixed an incorrect firing sound for tweaked 10mm automatic receiver. Improved loot from petrified corpses. Didn't even know that was a possibility. Reduce the impact of luck on the rate at which VATS critical meter fills. Situations where a player would fill the meter in 2 hits will now be closer to 3 or 4 shots. So yeah, as I said early on, if you were doing a high luck VATS critical build, you won't be doing as many crits as you used to. Potentially not quite half as many, but getting close to that. Explosions from nuka grenades no longer ignore line of sight. Sneak attack damage is now multiplicative instead of additive, meaning sneak attacks can hit much harder than before. Yeah, as we mentioned all the way through. Sneak attacks are getting a massive buff. Adjusted the range and flight characteristics of Thirst Zapper and Nuka and mod projectiles. Increased the speed of baseball grenades. Ghoul feral accuracy reduction. That's a weird way of phrasing that. Now reduces VATS hits chance 30% in addition to the unchanged 300% cone of fire increase. So if you're a feral ghoul, you won't hit anything in VATS. You just won't. Believe me, I have tried. It ain't good. Even a shotgun can't hit the broadside of a barn in VATS. It's bonkers. Bonus limb damage from twisted muscles no longer works on ranged weapons. That makes sense, it's supposed to be a melee perk. And it now reduces VATS chance by 30% in addition to the 50% cone of fire increase. So tweaks to how the accuracy reduction is calculated and stuff for the Vulcan power armor that I'm not touching on because we don't deal with that stuff. And nor should you. So there's a whole bunch of other stuff that we will go into in the next video, because, yeah, it's not quite as long, but there's a bunch of stuff and some stuff that's skipped over further on. So yeah, lots to dive into there. Well done if you made it through this one. I realise it was a long one. I imagine your cup of tea is thoroughly empty by now. Yes, do appreciate that. I will cut down what I can, obviously, he says, not having done this yet. Interesting changes, definitely a massive overhaul. There are some perk stuff, so you will probably want to check this next one, but fewer perks than in previous updates. They're getting there, slowly. Hopefully by the end of the year they'll have settled on their new combat balance system. They have hinted, incidentally, at some of the game's showcases a couple of weeks ago that their plan for the December update is humongous. So they're threatening biggest update ever, which, given that would include Wastelanders, I find unlikely, but we'll see. It's definitely going to be big anyway, so we'll see what they've got planned for our December update. But we got this one first, and this is obviously still laying the groundwork. So lots happening in 76 this year. For now, hope you guys found that useful and informative. If you did, you know where the buttons are: like, subs, notification bell, all that good stuff. Social media links in the description, and channel memberships down below if you want to support the channel. It really helps, and I really appreciate it. And yeah, join us for live streams if you get the chance as well. We're going to dive back into that next week, as yeah, I'm going to need a weekend between now and then, aren't I? So look forward to seeing you there if you're interested in that. Lots of cool stuff to watch. So for now, thank you very much for watching. I look forward to speaking to you all very, very soon.